I feel like I've tried every heatless curl tool under the sun, from those ribbons to socks to foam donuts. However, none of them work and they're all sitting in my drawer gathering dust because my method that I'm doing here today is just simply the best. I'm holding on to them because it's painful to think about how much money I've spent in these funny devices. However, just with some bobby pins and some water, you can achieve these results. Oh, the vintage glam. It does start out super curly, but it relaxes into a beautiful soft wave over time. Today's tutorial is relatively short, and don't let this fool you because you'll think that I'm crazy when you try this out at first. That was me looking at other pin curl tutorials, wondering how in the world it was only taking these women about 15 minutes to put their hair up, whereas I'm here for an hour trying to pin my curls and I barely have anything to show for it. Not to mention my arms wanted to die because I was holding them over my head for more than an hour, giving me a great arm workout, but completely exhausting me. But fear not, because it only took me 3 times to figure out my pattern. And by pattern, I mean curl pattern, which is what we're going to go over in a sec. So here I was showing my hair almost dry. It was about 85% of the way dry after a fresh wash day. And so I'm going to comb it out to make sure that there are no knots right before we start. And I'm going to use a fine-tooth comb to start to create my sections. So all of the sections for the pin curls that I create, I'm going to be curling the hair away from my face. And I always start with the front center part. So I have some bangs-ish. They're very long to be considered bangs. They're about chin length for me, but they are shorter than the rest of my hair, of course. And so those pieces I gather together, and as you can see, I'm just curling everything around about 2 fingers and pinning it away from my face. So once everything is sort of circled together, I just take a bobby pin and I put it in one side. And then I start with a section directly behind that, doing exactly the same thing. So I try to separate a small section about an inch wide, inch and a half, and then I'm trying to bring the hairs up. So I do make sure that there are no knots in the bottom, and I want to try to bring the hairs in an upward motion so that way I get a lot of lift right at the root. I'm not using any product, but you definitely could go in with some curling foam or some gel. You could even finish it off with spray, but I just like the feeling of no crunchiness in my hair. So this is all just done with the dampness of the pre-wash, and sometimes I'll wet my fingers too, just to make sure that the piece has enough saturation that it will be able to dry and stay in that shape. It's important that your hair isn't too wet because I've definitely been hasty and tried to put my hair up before my hair was adequately dried, and then the hair just never dried in time to take the curls out, and everything was pretty limp because the hair was just too wet to have the curls dry from the inside out. So now I try to err on the side of caution, and I let my hair dry probably more than I think it needs to be, and then add water rather than have it be too saturated with water and never dry into the curls. When I'm rolling, I try to fold the hair under itself rather than twisting, so that way the curls lay nice and flat. So once I finish the 2 to 3 on top of my head, I now have to move to the sides. I have several options for how I can do the side pieces, and this way I'll show you taking the entire front section and rolling it back. So this is the way that I would do my hair if I were going to go out in public, because the pieces are folding away from my face. It looks really beautiful as an updo. However, if I do want more lift at my root, instead I will opt to curl the pieces away from the side of my head rather than towards the back of my head. So that way, if you were to look at the curls, you would see 2 on the side of my face rather than all of the hair going to the back of my head. I'll put a little diagram here so you can see. And I try to make sure that the hairs that are not involved in the curl are adequately out of the way, so that way they don't get pinned and then are unavailable for the next curl that I need to do. And just like I mentioned before, I'm really trying not to twist it as much as I can. I'm trying to tuck the hair under itself. And that's it for the front. Now we can move on to the back section of my head. So I make sure that I try to untuck all the little hairs that may have been caught up in the previous curls. And I'm thinking about my head like a grid. So either I'll do 4 or 6 pieces, splitting down the middle, and do 2 or 3 curls on the left and 2 or 3 curls on the right. I have done this with just my hands before, and I do so in a pinch, but I really do like to have the fine-tooth comb to help me create the sections and make sure that the hairs are flat and not twisting on each other. Just like I've been emphasizing before, I want the hairs curling flat, not twisting. And I tend to find that the more secure way to add the bobby pin is to go from the outside towards the inside, although if I feel like it's insecure, I will put a bobby pin on each side. I can now do this process without even looking in the mirror, but it did take a while to get here, so please be patient with yourself if it feels like this is impossible to do. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I almost gave up because the first few times I was trying to do this kind of curling pattern, my arms were absolutely dying because I just couldn't get the coordination correct. However, now I can do it, nearly in my sleep because I've done it so many times. Like I said, I do it after every wash day, so I've gotten the coordination down pretty well. And I find it to be very easy, but you'll probably have to find your own pattern for your head and what works for your hair density as well. My hair is like medium to fine. It looks really voluminous, especially when I do this hairstyle, but I don't have a ton of hair. So if you have more hair, you might have to have more curls too. If I'm trying to do this section even more quickly, I'll only use 2 curlers per side, but I usually like to do 3. I feel 3 gives a slightly better and more intense curl pattern, but again, I can get away with 2 if I'm trying to be really, really quick. And on this side, I will insert the bobby pin in the other direction because I find it to be more secure when it's going towards the inside. And we're close to the end of this tutorial. I would say as my final parting thoughts is 1, for sure, don't give up. Figure out what your curl pattern is. It may look wildly different than mine, but your unique head shape will dictate your pattern and what you find to be the most flattering for your face shape as well. I have always curled away from my face, but that does not mean that you can't curl towards your face. That might create a better shape and a curl pattern for you, but this is just what I prefer for my own face shape. And my hair is straight starting out, so if your hair is wavy or, well, I guess it wouldn't be curly if you're doing this tutorial. If your hair is wavy and you do want to straighten it out, definitely don't use water because that might affect how the hair is setting, but you could use a hairspray instead. I'm finishing off the entire hairstyle with some rose water. You could definitely just use regular water, but I like how the rose water smells. So I just finally mist it all over. Get it a little bit damp. Again, not soaking because we want to make sure that it's able to dry fully. And that is it for part 1 of this tutorial. Definitely follow along because I will be posting a part 2 where I take the curls out and show you what it looks like. And I'll also do a little updo as well so you can see what that looks like. Thank you so much and see you later. Bye.